Hey, what's going on, everyone? Once again, sorry, it's been a whole week again. I've just been busy. Same old excuses, but I'm back. I'm back for another video. So let's get talking. But so this will be an interesting one, and I'm sure I'll get quite a few replies on this. So, at least I hope so. But the man, the myth, the legend that is the Juice to the Terminator, raised an interesting tweet the other day, which sparked some interesting discussions on Hangouts, as well as giving some interesting results in his poll on Twitter. The question was, as you can see on the screen here, I took a screenshot of it. If Nintendo released a service like Uplay or Origin that let you buy and play all their current and future exclusives on PC, what would you do? Of course, after seeing this, I immediately wanted to clarify that Juice hadn't turned to the dark side, which he confirmed he hadn't, and that the question poll was merely designed to see what other people thought, and did not represent his own thoughts, which is clarified, which was fine. Our discussions went a little bit further into the realms of the virtual console, etc., being on PC as well, perhaps, but my focus was, certainly more on this question, which for me raised the age-old conversation of should Nintendo go third party, because whether you agree or not, Nintendo releasing their games on multiple platforms other than their own makes those games essentially a multi-platform game, for whatever titles they decide to make multi-platform, which in the case of this poll would be all of their games, as Terminator Juice highlighted in the tweet, which for me raises a whole other load of questions, as in one more famous one being, would that new Nintendo game be designed specifically with Nintendo hardware in mind, or would it have to be designed to incorporate the functions and designs of other platforms if it was going to bridge the gap between multiple platforms, which is what was suggested, I suppose. Looking at the results of his poll, although there were only 52 votes, which in the grand scheme of things, is a drop in the pond in regards to software and hardware sales. It's not hard to imagine that out of the Nintendo bubble, there would be a wealth of consumers who would love such an option, because it's been something that's been begged for by many consumers for as long as I can remember with Nintendo. And even as nuts as it is, most recently with PS4 owners, begging for the likes of Super Smash Bros. Ultimate to come to the PlayStation 4. Now with me being a traditionalist, it goes a bit beyond wanting to play Nintendo games on Nintendo hardware only. Because like I touched upon briefly earlier, for the most part, Nintendo games and the way they are designed and played utilize Nintendo hardware in ways that other consoles simply don't. You don't need to look far back in time to see this. In fact, that's a lie. You need to look back through the entire history of Nintendo to see this, because that's how Nintendo work for the most part. Their hardware and their games become one, and if one or the other needs to exist, then they create it. So you have to ask yourself, what if these things are taken away, or focus is no longer on the unity between both spectrums, being the software and the hardware? What happens to Nintendo games then? A good example, and the most recent high-profile example, would be The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. A game that started out as a Wii U exclusive title, but was ultimately changed to fit the profile of a platform that lacked the features of the Wii U, which then stripped many things from Breath of the Wild that could have made a big difference to what is, without a doubt, still an experience unlike any other. But it leaves the question open: what happens when Nintendo change their games to match different platforms, even their own, this between the Wii U and the Nintendo Switch? Now, one thing I've noticed since the Switch has progressed throughout its life is the growing division between Nintendo players, the influx of new Nintendo players, and those who still desire only technical perfection with their games. Although I have many friends who have seemingly changed their gaming habits and likes when it does indeed come to the technical side of things. Through all this, I discovered something. Us traditional gamers are a dying breed, and there is nothing we can do to stop the growing trend that the masses seemingly want most of their games as a service. And not only that, but have most, if not all, these games available on whatever platform they desire. One where they can dictate their preferences on how the games play and run for their own personal preferences. This was given rise to the likes of Microsoft's Game Pass, the Xbox One X, the PlayStation 4 Pro, the increase in console gamers who want to play their games in 4K, and literally some scoff at games that are played in 1080p. The rise in those who desire PC-like graphical settings on their console games, the HDR options, the option to play their same game either at home or on the go. To stream all their games instead of buying physical ones. Many gamers completely abandoning ownership of their games and instead being content with downloading what they want, and after completing it, only desiring the option to hopefully download it again in the future. Just as long as they remain subscribed to whatever services or conditions that are attached to those download-only games. We're seeing gamers now who even find the notion of games running at 30 frames per second or dipping below it as unacceptable. Yet they are content with, acceptable day one patches on games that are, without a doubt, utterly broken on release and as anti-consumer as you can get. You can look no further than Anthem. Now, what does this have to do with the idea of Nintendo putting all their games on another platform? Probably absolutely nothing. I just got stuck in a rant about modern gaming then. But joking aside, it's clear that the marriage between a designer and their consumer is never a sure thing. Something I personally find pretty tragic. As I'm a romantic when it comes to consuming certain things like games, movies, music and books on certain platforms or mediums. As when they are designed first and foremost on the right platform or medium in mind, it's here that they can truly shine, or you will find those magic moments. With video games, it's never the simple factor of one thing trumps all. It's a combination of many, which is where we can probably find the true classics and true innovations springing up. I've done many videos on this in the past, of course. Nintendo would indeed probably sell more software if they went multi-platform between their home console and, in this particular instance, onto PC as well. But you have to ask yourself, at what cost would this be? The same cost that Sega has had to endure when they were stripped from their own platforms? And I think we can all categorically agree, at least most of us, that Sega became a completely different company, both in the way they felt and the way that they designed their games and the way their games turned out once they had left their own consoles and decided to do software on multiple platforms. I remember having a discussion on what could potentially work as a single platform where all games from every company could essentially exist without limiting as much as possible their own desires when trying to create something either new or old. And I think the best options, at the time, if I remember correctly, this conversation, the things that we came up with was having a, your average PC-like architecture, whether it be built into a specific platform or whatever, but you'd have to buy into the developer's ecosystem in some way by either purchasing a specifically designed controller for their games, paying into a service that remains essentially utterly unique unto their own, and potentially having the options of all these different services and interfaces still linking into each other to allow a worldwide level of communication and multiplayer on some sort of level. And this is why no one owns PC gaming. right? Because that's essentially the foundation of why this open platform still persists today. It's because you have this one platform that is a mismatch of everything, and some things work perfect on there, some things don't, but you have to give and take on what you're playing, which is why consoles exist, because not everyone likes the way one thing works. It's just never how the world has ever worked. It's why we have different variations of apples and bananas, because, and potatoes is why we farm different variety of things. It's why we love different types of music, different types of games, different type of controllers and stuff. It's once again variety, but variety where we could find niches and bubbles of things that we love and we know work perfectly because of certain things. As for me, I'm a Nintendo gamer through and through, and playing their games on their specifically designed platforms is not just a small part of their games for me, but it's an utterly integral part through how I connect with those games, how I play those games, how those games play, how they've been designed for gamers to play, how the media is put into physical form, how the hardware looks, how it sounds, how I connect with players locally all around the world, where I play the games and the ecosystems, and how I fundamentally feel as a consumer buying into a particular brand. And yes, if in my mind, if you take Nintendo games away from their platforms, for me, there is something that is without a doubt lost. And how do I know this? Because let's be honest, we've all played emulators on PC, which runs whatever games mostly better than the platforms they came from. If you're arguing from a technical performance point of view or whatever. But do I play emulators now, or even old Nintendo games? Hell no. It's simply not the same. Exactly how I feel about reading books on a tablet instead of a physical paperback book itself. It's just not for me. Something is lost in translation. Some people soak it up, but I don't. Nintendo platforms are an exciting place to be for me. Even if frustrations of things that were once great but don't return stay at the forefront. People beg for Xenoblade Chronicles X to be ported to the Nintendo Switch or even to the PC. I've seen. I argue that of course it's possible, but without the second screen of the gamepad, because that game was designed with that in mind on the hardware. The experience is nowhere near as intuitive or the same for me. You could ask the same thing about Breath of the Wild. If the map had remained on the gamepad screen and the TV was completely HUD free and you never needed to pause it in order to check the map or inventory. As we know, Breath of the Wild works without it. Of course it does. But that doesn't mean it's the best way to play it, and the Wii U could have potentially offered that, making Breath of the Wild even more perfect in my eyes. And let's not forget once again that Breath of the Wild was designed first and foremost as a Wii U game. There's something untouchable and something special about having things built on platforms that they were designed for. As a gamer of all the years that I've been playing games, still to this day, no other platform lets you play Super Mario 64 as well and as magical as the N64. And I own Mario 64, of course, on the N64. I got it on the Nintendo DS, the Wii and the Wii U, and have played it on emulator on the PC as well. That game was designed for the N64, and the N64 was designed for that game. For me, listen, the equivalent of Mario 64 on other platforms is like a chef messing around with the original recipe. Sure, you can add the extra, cherries and a touch of sugar, and I feel like you can enhance the recipe somewhat, but that original recipe still remains the base that everyone comes back to and agrees it was essentially perfect to begin with, and would not have existed if those original ingredients weren't brought together in the beginning. And finally, there's the argument that these companies should cater to as many needs of the consumers or potential consumers as possible. my answer to that has always been hell to the no. You know, we've seen it before when we think we know everything, right? People saying that the NX, you know, as a code name for the Switch, needs to be, you know, PlayStation 4 levels of power to succeed, and that its tablet-like console, you know, is going to utterly fail. You know, I saw a video from Review Tech USA the other day. You know, a guy who completely hated on the Wii U, called it trash, and now has been converted to the Switch, and he's owned up to it. He said he was completely wrong, blah blah blah. But you know, you see it. There's a reason why we're consumers of many things, because we're not the music makers, and until that music is created, you know, who are we to dictate, you know, if it'll be good or not? I mean, all we can do is base our decisions on the truths of the past. And with Nintendo, it's been proven time and time again that their games shine the brightest when they have been designed on their own terms and not on others. And their own terms being their own platforms that work together perfectly with their own software. The Switch has certainly, you know, caused a ruckus amongst established Nintendo fans, and you could argue that without its portable nature, something that Mr. T done a great video on, you know, watch that if you can find it on his channel. If the Switch, you know, was not portable, just a standard console, just had the Joy-Cons, the Switch, based off the use of these and other features and the removing of the previous features from other consoles like the Wii U and stuff that we all complain about, you know, it would be a pretty bog standard console, and one that would probably make me feel the same way I felt about the PlayStation 4. Or I feel about the PlayStation 4, where the games on the platform feel like two different entities, essentially, only existing there because they can. And if the software and hardware is all the same, what makes them unique? You know, people were happy to write off the Wii and the Touch generation, you know, but it was here. You know, most of all, I feel that Nintendo showed the world how unique platforms and unique games tied to those platforms, designed for those platforms, vice versa, can truly inspire the imagination and potential of gaming, and also remind you why you love Nintendo and the way they do things. You know, even if there are a few chinks in the armor, you know, no one is perfect. You know, and I wouldn't accept it in any other way. You know, although some things, you know, are just, you know, straight up what the fudgicles, Nintendo. You know, your online offerings and communications is something you should have wrapped up by now. You know, it's the stuff that we complain about. You know, of course, it's just because we've had it in the past, and if it's taken away without any reason, that's when we complain. You know, but anyway, you know, I think I'm done. You know, it sometimes feels nice to just talk about gaming as a whole. And although I focus on Nintendo here mostly, you know, I still touch upon many other aspects of gaming and the potential future of gaming. So, you know, I hope you all chime in and, you know, let me know your thoughts. And, you know, as always, you know, I'll reply to each and every one of you. You know, so yeah, thanks for listening all. Take care and peace. You know, playing Nintendo games on PC.